Welcome back to this afternoon session. Great to see good networking next door. Now I'm going to introduce Dr. Michael Wilkes, who's the head of the Thomas Elder Institute. Michael's going to talk about automatic stock water mineral supplements like Udose. Welcome, Michael.
Thanks, Graham, and welcome everyone, and thanks for coming along today. First of all, I'm going to talk to you about some of the work that we've been doing with mineral supplementation and ag tech solutions for it here at the Best Practice Farm. And I guess first of all, wanted to cover off why we're even considering mineral supplementation of our livestock. And the reality is, Australian soils are inherently old and typically very deficient in a large range of trace minerals. And this region in particular is renowned for deficiencies in copper, cobalt, and selenium. In particular, and to a lesser extent zinc, but many areas in Australia are faced with their own issues, and in order to get our high performing livestock really able to optimise their genetic potential, we need to make sure that we're meeting the mineral requirements, and the soils and their ability to put minerals into the plants just are not able to meet those requirements of the animals. So as many would be aware, there's a range of options to supplement those needs. So in particular, as we're pushing our systems to produce more and more, especially with heavy use and reliance on potassium fertilisers, we see some specific nutritional issues come up that need to be addressed that might actually see us supplementing with quite high rates of certain elements to meet those requirements. So in the case of potassium, we're really throwing a lot of our calcium and magnesium balances out. Really need to make sure that we're meeting those needs of animals at certain times. Once again, as well, with sulphur, the use of sulphur within fertiliser products, it again can throw things out and bind up copper, and they're just two examples. There's a myriad of interactions between minerals. So I guess currently the supplementation strategies that we would know consist of the classical lick block, which is typically a molasses and salt based product that's placed out, and animals can self-regulate their intake. We've got loose lick granules and powders in various different forms. We've got drenches that we can administer to livestock when they're in the yards. Boluses that we give to the animals and that sit in their rumen in a slow release. There's injectable products. Many options now around foliar sprays onto pastures and crops that enable us to spray the plant and either allow mineral uptake in the plant or for the mineral to sit on the actual leaf and be consumed by the livestock when they eat it. And then there's water supplementation, which is what I'm going to talk to you about today. But really, there's a number of considerations, and it's all part of the decision-making process when looking at mineral supplementation. And we really need to consider what form of the mineral that we're supplementing is, and there's a myriad of ways, from inorganic forms, which are fairly simple oxide and sulfate based forms, through to chelated organic type minerals, which have different rates of efficacy, but they also have different level of cost and shelf life. So we also need to consider how frequently we're dosing the animals and how long the product lasts. So in the case of an injectable product, it's not necessarily going to last the animals for months at a time. It's for a short period of time, as opposed to a form where they're eating it more regularly, and that's going a constant supply. We also need to think about the product stability in the environment, particularly weatherproofness, I guess, and rainfast. There's a number of rainfast products out there now in the physical forms, and we need to consider that when we're looking at an option. Also looking at the seasonal effects, we're not necessarily applying the same product year round. We're targeting dry season. We might be chasing a protein supplement to improve the utilisation of dry feed, or in the middle of winter and spring, we might be chasing higher calcium and magnesium products to imbalance, to counteract those high protein, high potassium pastures that the livestock are feeding. And of course, with all things, when we're considering a decision on farm, it's all about what's the relative cost and the return of doing so. So here on the farm, actually at the Kaibi Bolite site, we've got Direct Injection Technologies, who would presented to you in the previous session. One of their UDOSE units is out there and been out there since late last year. That's a remotely controllable dosage unit that allows us to administer a supplement in line to the livestock. So we've had that set up at Kaibi, and we've been running over the summer 2 groups of ewes to look at the efficacy of the mineral supplement and tease out some real world figures around the effect on performance longer term. Now, this is a sort of a prelim report on how things are going, because the ewes are in the process of coming up into lambing fairly shortly, and the key there will be around lamb vigour, lambing percentages, and how well those lambs do when they hit the ground. The mothers are lactating and still consuming the water, which have the mineral supplement. So the product that we're using is currently DIT's U-Trace product, and that's a breakdown there, and it's meeting iodine, cobalt, copper, zinc, selenium, manganese, magnesium, and sulfur requirements. In this instance, we've avoided a protein supplement with the dry feed, just to minimise variables, and these sheep have been getting supplementary feed over the course of the summer as well. So in terms of body weight and condition currently on those sheep, there's no major significant differences between the groups in terms of performance, but the telltale will be come lambing time and the performance of those ewes during lactation and over lambing. But it's worth thinking about, what does the use of a technology like this look like from a cost perspective, and in your booklets that you would have, there will be the case study on the UDOSE unit, and that's modelled on a 1,000 head scenario, being supplementary fed from December to May. So this is based on the U-Trace product, which is $6 a litre, and all those figures are in the case study there. So basically, there's the lease price of the UDOSE unit, the supplement cost itself, labour costs associated with administering the unit, and then obviously any motor vehicle costs according to getting out to the site there. And what we've compared that to was if we went with a fairly generic lick block, which is very commonly used throughout the industry, but also making sure that we're consistently applying it. That's probably one of the biggest limitations with mineral supplementation in livestock, is making sure that we get the product into the animals consistently, because they're not getting it from the diet. Needs to be in their diet consistently. So if we factored in that we were absolutely crossing all the T's and dotting all the I's, and making sure the lick block intake was maximised, the labour cost associated from that is broken down here, and that actually becomes, not only is the supplement expensive in this lick block scenario, that's actually the labour cost of actually making sure it's out there is definitely a consideration as well. So what we've seen is, even in that 6-month period, with the cost of leasing the UDOSE and the cost of the supplement, it was enabling us to give minerals to the livestock day in, day out, especially over the summer when they're drinking, at a significant saving to the lick block alternative. $6,500 for those 1,000 ewes. Now, you may be able to run more animals on that one unit, and then obviously there's an efficiency scale effect comes in there. But for this scenario, we're seeing a significant saving to be able to deliver that mineral product through to them. So the telltale will be, obviously, moving forward, what that looks like in a production gain. But if we're assuming that the 2 mineral products give you a similar production gain, we're making sure that we're meeting those requirements. The UDOSE enables us to do it with lower labour and at less cost, even though you've got that ongoing leasing cost of the unit. So in terms of further evaluation, we'll be ongoing the monitoring of the ewe performance into this coming lambing, and how those ewes perform during lactation and how they bounce out of lactation in particular. The next thing, we'll be looking at winter and spring supplementation options, changing the product that we're using and obviously tailoring it to that high protein lush green feed and the effects that can have on animals, particularly young stock. We want them to be growing. We're going to be targeting a high magnesium calcium product, and going from there. So that'll be another component of the demonstration. and bringing the economics of all of that together. The other consideration with a lot of these water dosing units is people say, well, my stock don't drink in the winter. What does that look like? So we'll be taking some measurements around that and working with DIT and some of the considerations around that. And then obviously for expanding our evaluation of the other supplementation strategies that are out there, because that enables producers to come and see what the various options are for them in a real world scenario. So I guess for the mineral supplementation side of things, there's a few critical factors. One of the options that can be addressed with an ag tech solution currently is this inline dosing, and that's an exciting space and certainly going to be key technology that we'll be evaluating here on the farm. But we really need to consider, A, what elements are you trying to address? When are you trying to address them? What sort of supplement do you have? What are you trying to, what's the form? How available is it, and how is it actually able to be solubilized and out through a dosing unit? And then there's also the labour considerations associated with that. Now, there's even factors to consider there. In some instances, going out and placing a physical product out there is part of normal practice for people because they're out checking on livestock anyway, and it's actually not as great a cost to them as it might be seen otherwise. So they're all the sorts of things that we need to think about, but certainly an exciting piece of technology, and with its various functions in terms of being able to sculpt the dosage rates, certainly something we would look forward to reporting on further.